do that final check because sometimes I've messed it up.
Admiral Sandy Stows, and you can call me Sandy. Feel free to call me Sandy throughout the episode, whatever suits you.
Will do. Yeah, I'll call you Sandy, but just for introduction and stuff like that, I would like to know. All right, we are live. Sandy, welcome to the show. So great to have you here.
Hey, Scott, I'm really excited to be here with you tonight.
So the audience obviously has not noticed anything because I kept producing episode after episode, but this is actually my first episode back from my summer vacation of 2021. So bear with me, I might have some rust. But anyway, welcome to the show. I'm excited to get you here. Retired Vice Admiral of the U.S. Coast Guard. Like, boom, got to have you here. Now, my first question diving in is like, what got you interested in, one, the Coast Guard, but two, most importantly, for the topic of this show, a leadership, opportunities within the Coast Guard? Why don't we start there first?
That's a big question. I could spend the whole time on just that question, Scott. So I'll try to give a condensed version, how I got interested in the Coast Guard. I think it's important for your listeners to hear that I didn't have these grand plans when I was a child or a teenager. I didn't know what I wanted to do. There were a lot of choices. And the opportunity is what really made it possible for me to have a career as a leader in the Coast Guard. In 1976, when the Defense Authorization Act of the United States required that all the Armed Forces Service Academies open their doors to women, I was a junior in high school. So I was living in Ellicott City, Maryland, and it made the Baltimore Sun, our local paper. There was a feature article on the Naval Academy in Annapolis. That's why the Baltimore Sun was the paper. And a neighbor walked it over to me and told to my mother and told my mom, hey, we know Sandy's a tomboy, so maybe she'll think this is interesting, this new opportunity for women to attend what was an all-male school up until this year. So as a junior in high school, that's when you're looking for colleges. So I had been looking at what I wanted to do, a veterinarian, a marine biologist, something to do with science. But this opportunity came along and I looked it over and said, wow, I get a chance to have an adventure, go to sea, see the world. And by the way, it's a free education, and you owe 5 years of service afterwards to pay back the United States government for funding your education. So I'm like, hey, this is an opportunity. I'm going to seize it. So I didn't have a plan to serve in the Coast Guard, but I seized an opportunity that had never been available. And I entered the Coast Guard Academy in the 3rd class to have women.
That's neat and interesting. I wouldn't say kind of similar to mine. However, I did go through our Royal Military College here, and I was the exact opposite. I learned about RMC when I was in grade 9. I said, that's where I'm going to go, and that's what I'm going to do. And people were like, you're crazy. I knew. But the funny part is, the story I always say to that is, I wanted to do that because where I grew up and back home in Newfoundland, Canada, everybody did one of 3 things when you graduate high school. You either went to Memorial University, you went to College North Atlantic, or you went and picked up a job mostly in Alberta. And I was like, well, I'm going to be different. So I'm going to go to RMC, the one university where everyone is exactly the same all day, every day.
And Scott, I also didn't plan to be a leader. So at that age, as a teenager, I was a shy young girl, a little bit less than confident. And it was a big step for me to go to what was mostly an all-male college at the time. I wasn't thinking of being a leader. I was thinking of getting through and surviving. It's a 4-year college. I was looking to graduate. And, the Coast Guard, though, gave me so many opportunities that forced me out of my comfort zone into leadership positions, starting there at the Coast Guard Academy for those 4 years. So I didn't look at going to the Coast Guard, into the U.S. military, to be a leader, but I soon realized what another opportunity was being placed before me with leadership positions. And I found that as my confidence grew, so did my desire to fulfill my full potential and to be a good leader. So it kind of grew with the opportunities that I took.
You mentioned something which a lot of leaders out there struggle with, and I see it in our Facebook group too. And we have something like 4,200 people in this Facebook, and it's a pretty common thread right now of, breaking out of that shell and getting comfortable with yourself as a leader. And actually, I'll be honest, I feel that every time I get promoted, right? And you probably did too. Even as you go up sort of ladder per se, you're like, oh, I got to get now comfortable in this level and break out of my shell at this level. So what's your advice out there for the people who are listening who are like, I'm shy, I'm now being put into this leadership position, or I'm being looked at for a leadership position. I would like it, but I'm not too sure. What do you have for them, how to break out of that and really get into it?
I'll tell a story because people like stories and it's one that resonates. When I graduated from the Coast Guard Academy and was commissioned as an ensign in the US Coast Guard, I was sent to my first ship, which was a polar icebreaker stationed in Long Beach, California. And we sailed within a couple of weeks for a 5-month deployment to Antarctica. What an amazing opportunity for a young woman. It was 220 people on the ship, weren't that many women. There were probably 2 of us officers and maybe 20 enlisted women. And I was assigned to break in to qualify as an underway officer of the deck, which meant I stood up on the bridge and drove the ship. When the captain wasn't there, I'd be in charge of the bridge watch and the whole ship, quite frankly. So navigating the ship on its course. And that's a lot to learn, but I was breaking in for that job and getting my confidence, getting my competence. And I came to the point where I felt competent, and all the qualified watch standards I was breaking in with, who were helping me to learn so I could earn that qualification, were recommending me to be qualified. And the captain had to sign a letter. My boss had to recommend me. But my boss wasn't ready to recommend me. And I asked him, well, what more do I need to do? I can do all the tasks. I've done all that's required. And he looked at me and said, there's just something missing. He said, I'm not going to qualify you until you stand on the bridge of that ship like John Wayne with a 6-gun in each hand, barking orders. And for those who don't know John Wayne, he was a Western hero back decades ago, but this story happened decades ago. And so, oh my gosh, I'm a shy young woman. I feel like I'm quietly competent. I would rather ask people to do what they're supposed to do, not bark orders. And so my boss told me I had to bark orders. I mean, imagine an introverted person who's shy and quiet, who just wants to win people's respect and build trust. Imagine a person like that, which was me, barking orders. So I worried a lot about becoming John Wayne, this cowboy with the guns, barking orders. And I realized, it occurred to me, I'm not John Wayne. I'm not going to try to be John Wayne. I am competent, but not confident. And competence without confidence is nothing, because my boss noted he had it in his mind, something missing in her. And it was that I didn't have the self-confidence to go with my competence. So my message to people who want to rise up is you have to reach beyond your comfort zone, and you have to exude. You got to believe in yourself, be comfortable in who you are. You are not John Wayne. You are, in my case, Sandy Stowe's, Ensign Sandy Stowe's, and you can be comfortable with that. You got to believe in who you are, and that confidence will exude and will make other people believe in you so that you can earn the recommendations or qualification. And if you don't believe in yourself, how are you going to believe in the people you lead? You're going to not be treating them the way they should be treated. So believing in yourself and being who you are, having the confidence to pair with that competence, is how you succeed going into ever more and more responsible jobs.
Was it powerful? Was That's a great story. And the fact that, I'd like to even expand on that and say, when you exude confidence, you don't, get others to believe in yourself, but they begin to believe in whatever it is that you're telling. Like, for example, if you're giving out those orders and you go, maybe left or port, sorry, port, and people are like, does she know what she's doing? Like, but like you go port now. Like I have no idea. I'm just assuming here that's how you do it. But the moral of the story is this: when you exude that confidence, people begin to believe in not only you, but what you're also preaching. And that could be from directions of navigating the ship, or expanding your vision, putting your vision out there, trying to get people to believe in the company and the organization getting through that rough patch. So yeah, love it. Confidence, competence, they got to go hand in hand for sure.
Yeah. And a lot of people, they kind of sit back and they blame their boss, they blame the system. They're not succeeding here because of they're not being included, discrimination or something. Well, have you stood up for yourself first before you start to blame other people? I didn't blame my boss. I said, hey, what is it about me that I'm missing that he's noticing? And I took it on myself to make it work. And instead of blaming my boss, blaming something else.
That's awesome. That's great words of advice, because it's all about what I talk about is extreme leadership. And that's basically taking ownership of every problem. And you can sit there and it's too easy for people to blame other people. But the reality is when you sit back and actually digest the situation at hand, most of the time, and I mean a significant amount of most of the time, it boils back to you. What you as a leader, what could have you done? You probably could have done something to mitigate or make that situation better or better yourself, or simply ask the question like you did in there. So,
Yes.
let's talk a little bit, let's talk a little bit more as you develop your career. What were some of the leadership challenges that really sticks out in your mind that you had to overcome, and how did you overcome them through your career?
Well, so when I was young, and I go back to when I was young a lot because my foundation was built when I was younger based on core values that shaped my character. And the experiences I had when I was young provided the foundation that let me lead at higher and higher levels as I went up through my career. So when I was young on one of my first ships, I had a hard time getting one of my people to do the job he was supposed to do. And it was a person who'd been in trouble, and he was on a punishment assignment that I was in charge of overseeing. And he didn't want to do the job, and he's already in trouble. So he wasn't as apt to be polite and respectful as many people in the military are, because he was already in trouble. You're in the Army, Scott, you've seen, you know what I mean about that. So I went to my boss and I said, I'm having a hard time leading this person to get his job done. And my boss looked at me and said, Sandy, there are three kinds of power: personal power, professional power, and position power. And I call those the three P's of power. And he said, if you're going to succeed, you want to lean on the first two and go to the last, which is position power, only when you really have to, with no other choice. So I learned throughout my career to use my personal power. That's how your personality, your empathy, your emotional intelligence, making people want to follow you, not have to follow you, personal power. And your professional power, how you present yourself, your professional demeanor, your competence in your job, your willingness to work to get the job done. So personal power, professional power. And why? How often do you have to use your stripes and your rank? So the more senior I got, even all the way up to vice admiral, I tried really hard to not use my position power, to always go, and had built for years and years my personal and professional power. And those are the best leaders, I think, because they're earning the respect and building the trust every single day, regardless of how senior they are.
Love it. The three P's. I couldn't agree with you more. Like the personal power is definitely where the magic is at, right? But then when you got to lean on that positional power, it's kind of like people are just like, fine, I'm doing it only because you could fire me or you could reprimand me or whatever. But you think I got your back when times get tough? When the first time I can, undermine you or, not cut your throat, but, all those negative types of things, or you come to me, ask me to work overtime because this project needs to get finished tonight for tomorrow's presentation. And I'm going to go, no, that's okay. because you hold that position over them, whereas when you're personal, you build that trust. It's more beyond just a job or that leader to subordinate relationship. It's actually developing a cohesive relationship with the person, where I can trust you, you can trust me, I got your back, you got my back, and we'll take care of it. But sometimes we have those difficult members, and sometimes you just got to put them in their place and know that you got to rely on that. But ultimately, it's got to be that last resort. It's got to be in that box with glass in front of you. Break glass in case of emergency box, because that can't be the only thing you go to day in, day out.
Right. And there's times when you and I both have had to punish somebody. And quite frankly, most of the times where I've had to have somebody standing in front of me to mete out punishment, it's been something that everybody has understood, that this is where we need to be. And even the member themselves often acknowledges that they walked too far off over the line, and they're paying the price. So I think that the key to success in a leader is, when you have to hold people accountable, do they understand why, and do they accept it? They might not like the fact that they were held accountable, but do they understand why and accept it? And does everybody else understand why? And there's good morale, we call it good order and discipline in the military. So that's what you want to achieve, is an atmosphere where everybody feels they're fairly treated. And if you don't hold people accountable who are messing up, everyone else knows it. The people who are working hard and doing the right thing are like, well, why am I working hard and doing the right thing when this guy or gal's getting away with it every day? So you have to hold people accountable and be disciplined, have the discipline when you need to have it.
No, 100%. And I would even say I hate doing that. I despise it, although I'm very good at it, but I hate it. To be honest, I hate doing that, because I feel like I failed. I feel like I failed the member. I feel, I've gotten to the point where this is the only thing. But you're right. And even double down on what you said about having to hold people account, then it allows other people to, you're accepting it, you're condoning the activity by allowing it to happen, right? And I remember when I took command of my squadron of 200 members, and there were some issues with some people's conduct, and I was like, guys, like, has anyone talked to them about this? They're like, no. I'm like, well, you're condoning it, you're allowing it, you're accepting it. Therefore, not only is he going to do it, but so is she, so is him, so is the rest of the team. Why? Because this is now acceptable behavior within this organization, which, oh, we're all around here sitting around my desk saying how bad it is, but yet no one's done a dang thing about it.
And you will lose those good people, because they will go to another organization where they are rewarded for doing a lot of work and for being one of the good guys, not just given the same pay, the same benefits, the same rewards that somebody who's not putting out and carrying their fair share.
100%. Love it. So, we talked about some challenges. What's a memory that sticks out where you're proud of something you've done as a leader, either to help your people, help your organization, that really sticks out in your mind? I go, yes, that made me feel good when I saw it, when this went down, when some of the lessons behind that experience.
So it's got to be, for me, my time when I was training. I had the privilege of training other people when I was the commanding officer of the Coast Guard's boot camp in Cape May, New Jersey. And I had that job in the mid 2000s. And after that, I was privileged to command the Coast Guard Academy. I did that from 2011 to 2015. I was the first woman to command any of the U.S. Armed Forces Service Academies. But having young people, enlisted people at boot camp, and officer cadets and officer candidates at the Coast Guard Academy was such a privilege. And I have never been more proud than when I felt like a parent when you had 100 recruits having spent 7.5 weeks at boot camp, coming in as civilians from all walks of life, and every stage of readiness or not readiness. And they come in and they are put into teams. They don't get to pick their teams, their company. They are put in there and they have to learn to adapt, be agile, and anticipate what's coming next. So I call those like the 3 A's: adapt, be agile, and anticipate. And they have to learn how to work together. They have to learn how to build trust and earn respect. And there's a huge diversity of people there, not just diversity of skin color, skin deep diversity. There's people with different experiences who did things differently. There's people with different personalities, introverts, extroverts, all these kinds of unique qualities that people bring, and they have to work together and form as a team. They have to become 100 individuals into one team by the time they graduate in 7.5 weeks. And it is remarkable to stand there and watch these young recruits march smartly with a band playing onto the parade field where they are gonna be graduated as seamen and firemen in the United States Coast Guard. And their parents are watching, and the parents sometimes don't even recognize the kid. They're like, who are you and what did you do with my son or daughter? It's so proud. It's a proud moment for all of us who trained the young people and for all the parents. And so that pride in a shared purpose, bringing people together to serve with shared core values, to execute a shared purpose, which is getting through boot camp, but also the Coast Guard, executing the Coast Guard missions. That creates a pride and a unity of purpose. And right now in our society, everything's divided. People are divided into camps. Well, in the Coast Guard and the military, we unite people around shared core values and shared purpose and pride in that. And that is a key to success. And I have never been more proud than to be part of that operation of building young people into leaders of character.
There's something about being in the training system that brings a lot of pride. I spent 4 years in our training system at my academy, my training center. And previous to that, I spent 7 months embedded with the Afghan National Army in training and mentoring them. So there's just something about that brings a lot of pride. But you talked about how we in the military, we take these young people, these new people, they show up, like you said, all kinds of backgrounds, everyone's different. And in the end of that training cycle, we've turned them into a cohesive unit. Now, you are a consultant and a coach, much like myself. I would like to get your perspective on this. Often people will say, great, that's the military. You guys can do that because you have a code of service discipline and you can turn around and charge people when they get out of line and do this and do that. But we're in the civilian world. We can't do these types of things. So what's your advice to leaders out there where they're having these difficulties in building cohesive teams, bringing the people together, getting them to buy into the vision and intent, and not simply, I'm here from 9 to 5, checking my paycheck and, cashing out?
Hey, I'd be lying to you if I said this is easy. But I do think this is why you see military people from, whether it's the Canadian Armed Forces, the US Armed Forces, you see them going into business and helping coach and train private sector organizations, because some of what you learn there is very transferable. And there's a really good book, and you alluded to it in the beginning of our conversation here. It's called Extreme Ownership by Jocko Willink and Leif Babin. They're two retired Navy SEALs who wrote this awesome book, Extreme Ownership. And they go into corporations and help. They use stories and examples from when they were leading teams over in the Middle East in combat missions, and bring that right back to the boardroom. So it translates, but it's not easy. So what do you have to do? You got to look at what the armed forces do right. So you've got a mission, you've got a vision, you've got core values, you've got to create a culture of respect, a workplace culture. So if you don't get all that right, of course you're going to struggle. And even if you've got all that right, you're still going to struggle with individuals who aren't part of that and see themselves as an exception. And you've got to really find those people who aren't interested in being part of the team and bring them into the team if possible. And if not, quite frankly, move them out of the team. And in the civilian world, that can be easier than in the military. It depends on where you are, but you shouldn't. There's a lot of tools for helping everybody to find their place and purpose. So here's what I would say: everybody's different. So you have 20 employees, and I don't care what they look like with skin color or gender, they're going to be different in their motivation, in the way they think, in their experiences, and what they like and what they don't like, and how they work best. So some people work best quietly in a closed little cubicle. Others work best in a great big team, battering ideas around. Well, if you put somebody who's an introvert, who's quiet, who wants to develop a software program in by themselves in a room, they're not going to do well in an open space environment with a bunch of other people, and they're going to be unhappy. Maybe they're your problem person. Maybe it's because you haven't looked at what kind of environment and leadership they need to achieve their full potential. So quite frankly, a leader today has to work a lot harder. You can't treat everybody the same. You have to look at where people have strengths and weaknesses, where they like to be, and you have to try to form your teams and form your work environment so that you can capture everybody's full potential. And that's hard, but you got to start with the purpose, the mission, the vision, and then looking at everybody on the team. A good way to do that: start out with a personality assessment for everybody in the different teams that you run. And we use one called the DISC at in the Coast Guard training commands. Quite frankly, I'm sorry, I don't remember what DISC stands for, but it's a team-based personality assessment. And people are amazed when they get their results back and then look at the qualities of their teammates, and they can say, oh, well, no wonder I always thought this person was trying to get out of something. It's just that they've got a different personality, and they were turned off when we said that. So they look like they weren't interested. But so I would recommend a personality assessment and team building along those lines so that people do have shared core values and a shared unity towards the mission and purpose.
Yeah, that's a lot of great advice. And honestly, I think that's the thing that really brings military teams together quickly, is that shared mission and vision, right? We immediately, everyone instantly has that shared mission. Like, oh, this platoon, this troop, ship, aircraft, whatever have you, have that mission, and everyone's in it like, okay, this is our mission right now. And I find the units that have the most difficulty are those where the mission's a bit vague, ambiguous, or it hasn't been really articulated well to the members, and therefore they're kind of struggling with it.
Or they question the mission because the commander or the leader, the CEO, hasn't clearly conveyed the mission and why it's important. Because it's easy for you and I in the military, because in the Coast Guard, we're saving lives or whatever we're doing. And in the Army, you're doing whatever you're doing. When you're in a corporate environment, it can be harder to get your hands around a mission that resonates down to the lowest levels. So you have to have everybody from the highest position, the senior VPs, vice presidents, all the way down to the lowest new employees, need to understand the mission and where they fit and where they add value. And a good boss is going to go around to the quiet junior people and catch them doing something right and commend them in front of people. Hey, Lisa, you really worked hard behind the scenes for a month on this project. And you know what? You were key to making it happen. Even if Lisa was a small cog in a small piece of the effort, she might not get much recognition. And here is the boss now calling her out. Oh my goodness, you've just made her day. And you've also inspired other people, because they know that their boss is looking in the corners for the people who are really putting out behind the scenes. So everyone feels valued up that chain of command, and you're all united. Because otherwise it's just easy to say, well, heck, we should all unite behind this common purpose. It's hard. I'm trying to give a few hints that leaders can use to peel back and get at the heart of being a good leader. And it's management by walking around. Age old, we call it deck plate leadership in the sea services, because you get out and you walk on the deck plate of the ships, see what's going on in the engine room, on top side, and and check out to be present for your people.
I often say the show I enjoy and hate the most is Undercover Boss, because I enjoy it because it's interesting, but I hate it because, like, why does it take a TV show for you to go visit your franchises? Like, come on.
I've
We have
seen the show. I feel the same way.
right. Well, I'm sure all people in our space feel very similar to us, right? However, just to quickly boomerang back, the DISC, that stands for dominance, influence, steadiness, and conscientiousness. There we go. For the listener out there, it is in the show notes, and you can always check the show notes out at movingforwardleadership.com/190. But anyway, I just wanted to throw that out there for people because I was interested. This is the first time I actually hear of this one. I've heard of. I was expecting Myers-Briggs to come out of your mouth, but you came with DISC, which is a new one to me. So I'm like, ooh, got to check this one out. Interesting. I might have to check out them and try to figure out what my style is now, just because I am a bit of a geek like that. So we were talking, about casting our vision, mission, building cohesive teams, moving those yardsticks forward. And you were talking a bit, you kind of hinted a bit at leaders when we get stuck. And it happens to the best of us. Sometimes we just get stuck. We're like, I don't know what's the right decision, what's the wrong decision, what should I do here? What's your best advice out there for the leaders listening when you find yourself in that situation where you're stuck, you're not 100% sure where to go? And I'm not a big quote guy, but I'll throw this one out. As Colin Powell says, the top is the loneliest place. How do you not be so lonely?
How do you not be so lonely? Well, I think lead, follower, get out of the way has always been with me. When I was a junior or younger person, man, I used to hate working for bosses who couldn't make a decision. I'm like, there's no perfect decisions out there. So I have a lot of little vignettes over time because I've been so irritated by this. So lead, follower, get out of the way. And then there's one by General Patton is an okay decision made today is far superior than a perfect decision made next week when it's too late. So make decisions. So leaders need to make decisions, and it is hard. And I remember standing on the bridge of a ship in really bad weather, way out in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean, and you'd love to have somebody to ask what to do. You're very lonely. And they say that when you're in command and you look over your shoulder, there's nobody there to ask. So quite frankly, when I looked over my shoulder, there was God for me. I'm a person of faith, but it's lonely. So I think being in tune with your own spirituality is important so that you have that confidence that you don't need to have. When you don't have anyone to speak with, you have the strength to look inward for that gumption that it takes to make that decision. And I have a little bit of a ditty about decision making, and I've seen a lot of people that get stuck at the executive level, not able to make a decision. And I call it the paralysis by analysis. They just need more information. I'm going to be paralyzed on this decision until I get more. And they want 100% of the information before they can make a decision. Nope. You just have to get the 85% solution and do it, or you'll just everybody will go crazy below you. So that's the paralysis by analysis. There's the consensus conundrum, where you're not going to make a decision because one person disagrees and you want everybody to be happy and agree. When the decisions are tough at the executive level, you're never going to please everybody and have a decision that everybody cheers. And so the consensus conundrum, don't let that happen. And then there's the being nice syndrome. You don't want to make the decision because somebody is going to be adversely impacted. Yeah, that's life. When you make a tough decision at the executive level, there's going to be winners and losers, proverbial winners and losers. And you have to make those decisions. So I always warn people, and these are all in my book, and I know you've got that in your show notes, but 3 problems, blocks for decision making. So you have to have the confidence in yourself. It goes back to my thing about believing in yourself, looking inward to your center and having the confidence to make those decisions, and understanding that you owe it to the people you're leading to make those decisions and not sit on them until everybody's frustrated.
No, you're absolutely right. I've coached many people through decision-making process, and you're right. 85% solutions better than now is a better than 100% solution too late, right? And a lot of people I find get hung up like, well, if I make the decision and I realize that it's wrong, I can't go back and change it. I'm like, well, why not? They're like, well, because then I lose face. I'm like, no, you're actually faced with a whole new decision, a whole new scenario. Like, what do you mean? I'm like, you have the information you have right now to make the best decision possible. You make that decision, and then suddenly new information comes out and comes to the forefront. You're in a new scenario. You're making another decision. So you can go ahead and change because you're just altering the course, correcting that ship. It'd be like you as the navigator of your ship and saying, okay, let's set a line from New York, and we're going to go, all the way down to Florida. Then, pick somewhere in Florida down to Miami, and go, all right, let's set the heading and never course correct it. I'm pretty sure you're going to hit a rock or two along that course, but you make those minor adjustments, right? You make those minor adjustments along that journey because why? There's new information. Like, oh, there's a big island in front of us, a couple miles away. Okay, let's go around. It's not common that sense. Difficult. It's common sense, but yet at the same time, people don't realize that it actually is common sense, and they get sucked into this. I can't lose face. I can't seem to be incompetent. Like, no, you're actually doing the inverse. You're showing competence because you're making decisions based off of information that is in front of you. And I even go so far to say, even be transparent about it, so people know how competent you are.
Absolutely.
So, no, love this conversation. It feels good to be back in the seat behind the microphone. Been away since end of June, so feels good to be here. Sandy, I want to hit a couple last thoughts with you as we slowly wind down the show here. One thing which was interesting to me, like you talked at the beginning of the show about being the third class, I believe, of the academy with females, and I'd be remiss not to get your point of view and perspective on that, of being a female leader going up through those challenging times. I assume, I'm a young male here, I have no idea, but I'd like to get your perspective on that. And for female leaders out there, is there any female leader advice you would have for them so that they can go, I got this? Because, I believe I have a lot of respect for female leaders out there. Some of my best bosses have been females. Some of my best coworkers have been females. I don't believe, I don't look at people and go male, female, race, any of this stuff. I'm like, you're just a member of the team, just like I am. So, but I know there are a lot of people out there who don't have that experience and don't have that mentality. So I want your advice for the females out there and how they can navigate these seas and be the best leader out there possible.
Absolutely. And that's part of the reason the title of my book is Breaking Ice and Breaking Glass, Leading in Uncharted Waters. We all have this uncharted waters, and I had a lot of them, being the first woman, this or that. But I will say that going back to childhood, which I think is really important because it's where your character and core values are formed. I was raised with 3 brothers. So it wasn't unusual for me to be in an atmosphere or a situation with mostly men. And I do think that matters. So I am very aware that when I talk about this, I have an advantage because I was raised with 3 boys. When they had all their friends over, I was playing football, flag football with the kids, the boys in the neighborhood mostly, and I was a tomboy. So that matters. But so my perspective is when I got into environments where it was mostly men, I already knew what that was like. So I guess I would encourage women to look at being different as a power, not not something that pulls you down. So if you look at it as being different, as you can understand the situation. So you've had men in your life, you've had a father, and so you kind of know a little bit about how men think maybe and operate. Then if you're the only woman in that group, use that as a power. So take the initiative to break the ice, so to speak. I did a lot of breaking the ice figuratively, not just ramming icebreakers into the ice. So be the one who helps men in a workplace understand what it's like to have a woman. And I was the first woman on a number of my ships. And I remember saying to the guys, hey, because they'd be all hesitant and what do we do? We got a woman on board now. And I'd be, hey, you have sisters, brothers, and sisters and moms and aunts and all that, don't you guys? And they'd be, well, yes, ma'am. Well, I'm like, well, it's no different. We're just doing our jobs. So I think women who want to succeed, don't sit back and wait for someone to reach their hand out and pull you up. Yeah, should that happen? Sure. Really good leaders are going to be inclusive, and they're going to be looking for the people they want to reach a hand out to and pull them in. So the only woman in the group, a good leader is going to make them feel included and invite them to the table. But if you wait for the invitation, you might be waiting forever and you might get bitter and disappointed. Use your power of being different to speak up and walk to the table and take your seat and put the guys at ease, make them feel comfortable having a woman in the group. And I found that to be a very strong tool to use. But it came from learning how to believe in myself, going back to John Wayne with the 6 guns and coming to peace with the fact that I wasn't John Wayne, and realizing that Sandy Stowes was as powerful a leader as John Wayne in her own right. And that when I was in a room with all men, I was going to be the one who put them at ease and help them understand how to work in this diverse situation. Instead of sitting there waiting to be served, I was willing to get up and serve others. And that goes a long way towards fitting in.
What a great way to wrap this whole conversation up. Start with John Wayne and finish with John Wayne. This has been fantastic, Sandy. I've thoroughly enjoyed this conversation with you, but unfortunately, all good things come to an end, and I do want to be respectful of your time. But before we hit stop on our record button, I do got a couple last questions for you. And the first question being a question I ask all the guests here at the Peak Performance Leadership Podcast, and that is, according to you, Sandy Stowes, what makes a great leader?
Core values. You've got to have strong personal core values that align with your organizational core values. And if you don't have that, you don't have anything. And I think one of the most important core values is humility.
Couldn't have said it better myself. And the final thing is, how can people find you? How can they follow you, be part of your journey? It's all about you now.
Oh, thank you. Well, when I left the Coast Guard after 40 years in the uniform, I wrote a book to give back the leadership lessons learned, some of what you've heard tonight. I thought, man, the Coast Guard has given me a chance to move from a shy young girl to a confident woman who could achieve my full potential. So I wrote this book. It's lessons based on stories of my career. It's called Breaking Ice and Breaking Glass, Leading in Uncharted Waters. You can get it at any bookstore. It's with a traditional independent publisher. You can also find me at www.sandrastowes.com. And on that website, you can find my weekly blog, Leading with Character. And I've got a lesson every week that's published on that blog. So please take a look and become the leader you're meant to be.
And it's easy for you as always, listener. It's all at the show notes. Feel free to go to movingforwardleadership.com/190. Sandy, again, it's been a pleasure, ma'am. It's been an honor. It's great. And I guess I could say you've now are the highest ranking member to ever come on this podcast as a former military guest and serving guest. So congratulations. Well done to you.
Thank you for having me, Scott. It's been my honor. I love giving back.